This world does not reward kindness. It punishes it. And history proves it. Look at American politics, business, and culture. The warm-hearted get stepped on. The generous get taken advantage of. The nice guys finish last, while the cold, calculating minds rise to the very top. John D. Rockefeller didn't build an oil empire by being soft. Abraham Lincoln didn't preserve the Union by being sentimental. Steve Jobs didn't change technology by being nice. They mastered coldness, they mastered strategy, and they became untouchable. Today, I'm going to reveal 7 Machiavellian lessons that will transform you into someone dangerously cold, someone impossible to manipulate, impossible to exploit, and impossible to ignore. These lessons aren't abstract. They've been proven in American boardrooms, battlefields, and backrooms for over 200 years. Drop this affirmation in the comments. Power over pity. Now let's dive into the first lesson. 1. The harsh reality of warmth. Here's the brutal truth you need to face. Your warmth is not earning you respect. It's being weaponized against you every single day. Most people like to believe kindness wins. They cling to the illusion that if they're warm, open, and generous, others will appreciate them, protect them, and return the same energy. But history, and your own life, if you're honest, tells a different story. Warmth is not a shield. It's a weakness map. It shows others exactly where to press, exactly how to exploit, exactly how to bend you to their will. Take American politics. In the first televised presidential debate of 1960, Richard Nixon tried to play the warm statesman. He smiled. He softened his tone. He tried to be agreeable. But on television, that warmth backfired. He appeared sweaty, anxious, even submissive. Meanwhile, John F. Kennedy remained calm, composed, unreadable. He didn't rush to prove himself. He didn't beg for approval. His cold poise won the nation's trust. Nixon's warmth was mistaken for weakness. Kennedy's coldness became power. The lesson is clear. In a world where perception is everything, being warm makes you predictable, and predictability is the beginning of manipulation. Or look at the steel empire of Andrew Carnegie. Today, he's remembered as one of America's great philanthropists, a man who gave away millions to libraries and universities. But people forget that Carnegie only became generous after he had already secured power. In his rise, he was ruthlessly cold. He cut costs without hesitation, broke strikes, crushed unions, and refused to let sentiment interfere with profit. If he had been nice, he would have been swallowed by competitors. His coldness built his empire. His later warmth was only possible because his coldness protected him long enough to reach the top. This pattern repeats everywhere. Warmth rarely protects you in the climb. It only makes you useful to those climbing over you. Think about the office worker who's always the nice guy. He says yes to extra tasks. He covers for colleagues. He tries to please everyone. And what happens? He doesn't get promoted. He gets drained. The very warmth he thinks makes him likable becomes the reason others dump their work on him. Eventually, when he's burned out, he's quietly discarded and replaced. His usefulness ran out, and so did his value. The harsh reality is this: warmth doesn't make you loved. It makes you easy. It makes you accessible. It makes you a tool in someone else's strategy. And tools get used until they break. Now, this doesn't mean you should become cruel or heartless for no reason. Machiavelli never said cruelty for cruelty's sake. The point is to recognize that if your warmth is uncontrolled, if it's unguarded, it's a liability. People will respect what they cannot easily read. They will fear what they cannot easily control. And they will promote what they respect and fear long before they promote what they pity. Look at business moguls like Steve Jobs. He wasn't known as warm. He was cold, exacting, demanding. Employees feared disappointing him, and because of that fear, they produced excellence. Jobs built products that changed the world. Had he been endlessly warm and forgiving, Apple would never have become what it did. His coldness created a standard that pity never could. Every time you reveal too much of yourself, your doubts, your insecurities, your constant willingness to say yes, you hand over your power. Every time you prioritize making others comfortable over protecting your own boundaries, you're setting yourself up to be used. And make no mistake, people will use you until there's nothing left to use. Machiavelli wrote, "He who is the cause of another becoming powerful is ruined." Think about that. Every time your warmth strengthens someone else at your expense, you're digging your own grave. Every time you empower someone who would never return the favor, you're building the conditions of your own downfall. From this moment forward, understand this: every interaction is a power dynamic. Either you're gaining power or you're losing it. There is no neutral. Your warmth, if unguarded, is not harmless. It is giving away power that should belong to you. And so the lesson is clear. Stop trying to be loved at all costs. Stop thinking that saying yes makes you safe. It doesn't. It makes you disposable. Warmth invites exploitation. Coldness commands respect. If you want to stop being used, stop being predictable. If you want to stop being discarded, stop being excessively warm. Drop this affirmation in the comments. Coldness protects me. 2. The cold genius mindset. Most people in America live their lives trapped in the role of victim. Something bad happens and their first words are, "Why me?" They sink into pity, replaying the injustice over and over, hoping that someone will care enough to rescue them. But pity never builds power. Cold thinkers play a different game. They don't waste time asking, "Why me?" They ask, "How can I use this?" They understand that misfortune is not an end. It is raw material. Betrayal is data. Failure is intelligence. Setbacks are stepping stones, if you are cold enough to strip away emotion and extract the lesson. Look at American history. Abraham Lincoln lost far more races than he won. In 1858, he ran for the Senate against Stephen Douglas and lost. Most men would have folded, spending years drowning in regret. But Lincoln was cold. He studied the battlefield of politics, calculated the alliances he would need, and used the national exposure from that loss to fuel his presidential campaign just 2 years later. He didn't cry about the injustice. He didn't wallow in defeat. He extracted leverage from loss. That is cold genius, the ability to turn humiliation into fuel and to transform pain into positioning. Or consider Ulysses S. Grant. Before becoming the general who defeated the Confederacy, Grant was a failure. He struggled in business, drifted in obscurity, and was dismissed as a nobody. But when the Civil War erupted, Grant did not complain about his ruined past. He treated his failures as training. Every setback had given him data about men, leadership, and survival. And when his moment came, he acted decisively, coldly, and rose to command the Union Army. While others drowned in despair, Grant used his scars as a map. The same pattern holds true in American business. In the 1990s, bookstores laughed at Jeff Bezos. They dismissed Amazon as a novelty, an online experiment that would never compete with brick-and-mortar giants. Many CEOs would have complained, cursed the unfairness, or tried to win pity. Not Bezos. He gathered intelligence. Every dismissal became confirmation of a blind spot in the industry. He doubled down, studied consumer behavior obsessively, and turned weakness into dominance. While competitors mocked him, they were too busy laughing to adapt. He built an empire from their arrogance. This is the cold genius mindset. You don't react emotionally, you collect information. When betrayed, you don't rage, you take notes. When passed over for promotion, you don't sulk. You learn the real game being played. When rejected in love, you don't beg. You study the pattern and protect yourself for the future. Cold genius doesn't waste energy on outrage. It saves energy for strategy. Think of Thomas Edison. He failed thousands of times before perfecting the light bulb. A warm thinker would have taken those failures personally. Why can't I get this right? Maybe I'm not good enough. Edison didn't ask why. He asked how. Each failure was data, narrowing the path toward success. His cold mindset saw failure not as personal humiliation, but as progress. Or take Henry Ford. His first 2 companies collapsed, and investors walked away. Did he drown in self-pity? No. He studied every error. He refined his vision, reorganized his resources, and launched the Ford Motor Company, which revolutionized the automobile industry. His rivals laughed when he fell. They weren't laughing when his assembly lines made him one of the most powerful men in America. Machiavelli once wrote, "A wise man does at once what a fool does at last." Warm thinkers waste months or years grieving before finally learning the lesson. Cold thinkers extract the lesson immediately and move on. That is why they win. That is why they always stay one step ahead. The cold genius doesn't let emotions drive the car. Emotions are passengers. They ride along, but they don't steer. Strategy, calculation, and anticipation do the steering. Cold minds treat every betrayal as free intelligence on human nature. They treat every loss as rehearsal. They treat every failure as evolution. Most Americans stay stuck because they never upgrade. They repeat the same mistakes year after year, clinging to emotion instead of logic. But cold genius upgrades fast. It adapts, it evolves, and it always turns pain into power. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I upgrade fast. 3. When emotions betray you. Emotions are liars. They whisper illusions into your ear, convincing you to make choices that feel good in the moment, but destroy you in the long run. Your emotions were not designed for skyscrapers, stock markets, or modern power games. They were designed for caves, for survival against predators, for quick reactions to danger. In today's world, those same instincts betray you more than they protect you. Think of Wall Street in 2008. The financial crisis sent shockwaves across America. Millions of ordinary investors panicked. Fear gripped them. They sold their stocks at the bottom, desperate to escape pain. But the cold investors, the ones who kept their emotions in check, played the opposite game. Warren Buffett ignored the hysteria. He trusted results, not fear. He looked at the fundamentals and realized panic was temporary, but value was real. While emotional investors were liquidating their future, Buffett was buying. He became richer because he was cold when others were crying. That is the difference between emotional slavery and cold mastery. This truth doesn't only apply to money, it applies to love. How many men stay in toxic relationships because they feel something? They feel hope. They feel attachment. They feel a sentimental pull. But results never lie. The results show consistent disrespect. The results show betrayal, neglect, or manipulation. Emotions say, "Stay, maybe it will change." Results say, "Nothing has changed. Nothing will change." The cold mind chooses results over illusions. The cold mind knows that every day wasted in false hope is a day stolen from growth. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men are driven by love or fear." Love, as history shows, fades. Fear endures. Look at American presidents. Theodore Roosevelt was not loved by everyone, but he was feared. His fearless action, charging up San Juan Hill, breaking corporate monopolies, sending the Great White Fleet across the oceans, earned him lasting influence. He didn't beg for affection. He didn't govern to be liked. He projected strength, and strength created respect that love alone could not secure. Contrast that with presidents who begged for popularity. They vanished quickly, their legacies forgotten. Fear lasts. Love evaporates. Even in business, emotions betray the ambitious. CEOs who manage companies with sentiment often lose to rivals who manage with cold numbers. Kodak once dominated photography, but their emotional attachment to film blinded them to digital innovation. They felt safe. They felt untouchable. And those feelings destroyed them. Apple, under Steve Jobs, showed the opposite. Jobs was cold enough to cut beloved projects, cold enough to fire people who couldn't keep up, cold enough to pivot when necessary. That coldness is why Apple thrives while Kodak is a memory. Everywhere you look, emotions lead people astray. The gambler in Las Vegas feels he's due for a win. The employee feels loyalty to a company that will fire him the moment it's convenient. The voter feels swayed by charm and smiles instead of policies. In every case, emotions blind them to reality. Cold thinkers, however, cut through the fog. They look at results. They analyze patterns. They act based on truth, not comfort. Your emotions will tell you to avoid hard conversations because they're uncomfortable. Results will show you that avoiding them creates bigger problems later. Your emotions will tell you to keep giving second chances to people who fail you. Results will show you that repeated patterns are proof of character, not accidents. Your emotions will beg you to stay where it feels safe. Results will reveal that safety is stagnation, and stagnation is death. The cold mind doesn't discard emotions entirely. It uses them strategically. A cold leader may project warmth when it secures loyalty. A cold negotiator may display frustration when it pressures the other side. But the key difference is control. Warm minds are controlled by emotions. Cold minds control emotions. This is why emotional people remain stuck. They live in cycles of regret, heartbreak, financial ruin, or wasted years. They confuse feeling with fact. But results never lie. Results are the only honest measure of success, loyalty, and power. So ask yourself, are you living by what you feel or by what actually works? Because the world doesn't reward how you feel. It rewards what you achieve. Drop this affirmation in the comments. Results over relief. 4. Silence as a weapon. Silence terrifies people. It exposes them. It pulls at the threads they're trying to hide. Most people hate the blank space, so they rush to fill it with noise, excuses, promises, and mistakes. The powerful learn to love the pause. They treat silence like a scalpel, precise, surgical, and devastating when applied correctly. Look at the world of organized crime in 1930s New York. Lucky Luciano didn't always threaten with bullets. Often he threatened with nothing at all. In meetings, he would sit still and listen. He would let the room fill with his opponent's anxiety. Men would lean forward, reveal alliances, brag about leverage they didn't truly have, or make concessions just to stop the uncomfortable quiet. The silence did the work for him. No violence, just the pressure of emptiness that exposed truth faster than any interrogation. The same principle operates in corporate war rooms. Steve Jobs famously used silence in product meetings like a weapon. He would ask a question and then wait, long enough that engineers, designers, and executives felt compelled to explain themselves more and more. People rushed to fill that void, often confessing flaws or revealing doubts they intended to hide. Jobs didn't interrupt. He didn't panic. He let the silence do the damage and the learning. The information he needed arrived on its own, unguarded. Silence works in negotiations because it shifts the burden. When you speak too quickly, you give away anchors, prices, fears, timelines. When you stay quiet, the other side must supply the next move. They will often reveal their bottom line or their insecurities, just to remove the discomfort. In poker, the best players are unreadable. They stare, they breathe, they give nothing away. Their silence forces opponents to act first, to overplay hands, or to panic. The table itself becomes a weaponized quiet, where emotion loses and calculation wins. Lawyers and interrogators know this instinctively. A well-timed pause after a question makes testimony crack. Jurors feel the weight of the silence and assume guilt or hesitation. Interrogators sit in neutral, refusing to fill the air, and watch as suspects begin talking themselves into trouble. Silence reveals patterns, inconsistencies, and truths people would have otherwise concealed if the conversation stayed comfortable. But silence is not a blunt instrument. There's a big difference between strategic silence and anxious silence. Anxious silence is a reflex, a freeze born from fear and lack of control. It signals vulnerability. Strategic silence is a choice. It is calm. It is a deliberate withholding that forces others into the uncomfortable labor of disclosure. Strategic silence reads as confidence to allies and as menace to rivals. How do you practice it? Start small. In meetings, after someone makes a proposal, count to 3 before responding. Ask a direct question and resist the urge to rephrase or explain away their answer. When pressured for a quick decision, try a single, measured pause before you answer. Let the silence make the offer sound worse in their ears. Use facial stillness. Let your body say nothing. Watch how people rush to fill the void with information you can use. Silence also amplifies whatever you say when you finally break it. A single sentence after a long pause cuts deeper than 10 sentences delivered in a rush. Your words will carry weight because they were earned by the wait. People listen differently when they've been forced to wonder what you're thinking. A warning: weaponize silence responsibly. Use it with strategic intent, not to humiliate needlessly, but to gain clarity, extract truth, and preserve your leverage. The power is in control, not cruelty. Allies should feel your silence as wisdom. Rivals should feel it as a threat. That duality is what gives silence its teeth. Every conversation contains spaces. Most people fear them. Powerful people use them. Make your silence an instrument of discovery and control. Train it, refine it, and watch how much more the world reveals when you stop talking. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My silence cuts. 5. The hidden formula of power. Power is not luck. It is not magic. It is not given to you by chance or by kindness. Power is calculated, and the calculation always begins with this formula. Understand human nature faster than everyone else, then use that understanding to influence behavior before they realize what's happening. Every human being is governed by two forces: fear and desire. The fear of loss, humiliation, being left behind, being exposed. The desire for gain, pleasure, recognition, and security. If you can identify which fear drives a person and which desire controls them, you hold the keys to their behavior. And once you have the keys, you can open any door. Look at Franklin D. Roosevelt. During the Great Depression, America was paralyzed. Millions feared poverty, unemployment, and collapse. At the same time, they desired security, stability, and a future worth believing in. Roosevelt saw this duality before anyone else. His New Deal wasn't just policy. It was psychological mastery. It gave people relief from fear while feeding their desire for hope. That is why Americans followed him through 4 terms of office, longer than any president in U.S. history. He calculated power by reading human nature with ruthless accuracy. The same formula works in business. Elon Musk built his empire on 2 human impulses: the fear of missing out and the desire for the future. Even when Tesla was bleeding money, even when SpaceX rockets exploded, people invested. Why? Because Musk made them believe they were buying a piece of tomorrow, and because they feared being left out of history. Their rational doubts about numbers and risks were overpowered by deeper instincts Musk had already mapped. That's not luck, it's calculation. The lesson is timeless. People brag about what they lack. They fear what they try to hide, and they desire what they cannot admit. The insecure man who constantly tells you how much money he makes? He fears being broke. The woman who always brags about her independence? She secretly desires to be needed. The executive who boasts of his brilliance? He doubts his own intelligence. Cold minds listen not just to words, but to patterns. They read between the lines. They see the insecurity hidden inside the brag, the fear hiding inside the silence, the desire camouflaged behind denial. Warm minds hear the noise. Cold minds see the truth. Consider J. Edgar Hoover, the man who built the FBI. He held power in Washington for nearly 50 years, not just because of the Bureau's resources, but because he understood what every politician feared and desired. He gathered files, secrets, and weaknesses. He knew who was vulnerable to scandal, who feared exposure, who desired reputation above all. Presidents came and went. Hoover remained. Why? Because he mastered the formula. He didn't wait to be feared. He calculated fear and installed it before anyone could resist. The same principle applies in everyday life. In negotiations, the person who spots fear or desire first controls the outcome. A car salesman sees your desire for status the moment you look twice at the luxury model, and suddenly the price inflates. A boss notices your fear of being replaced, and suddenly your workload doubles without a raise. But flip it. If you detect your boss's desire for recognition, you frame your work as a reflection of their leadership, and they'll defend you. If you sense the salesman's fear of missing a sale, you wait in silence, and the price drops. Cold genius means recognizing the game faster than the other side. Machiavelli wrote, "Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times." The formula doesn't change, but its application must adapt. A Depression-era farmer was driven by different fears and desires than a modern CEO. A 19th-century industrialist was motivated differently than a 21st-century tech founder. But the principle is eternal. Power flows to the one who sees beneath the mask. Train yourself to watch. Notice what makes people uncomfortable. Observe what they repeat. Pay attention to what they avoid discussing. Their silence reveals as much as their speech. Their habits betray what they truly fear and crave. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You'll hold an advantage most people don't even know exists. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I calculate power. 6. Reputation is armor. Your reputation arrives before you do. It walks into the room ahead of you, whispers in corners you're not standing in, and shapes how people treat you before you even open your mouth. In America, reputation has built empires and destroyed them. Think of Al Capone. In the 1920s Chicago, Capone's reputation was more powerful than his guns. Politicians feared him, businessmen paid him, and ordinary people spoke his name with caution. His reputation for being untouchable kept rivals at bay. He didn't need to fight every battle because his reputation fought for him. Even the rumor of crossing Capone was enough to silence enemies. That's the armor of reputation. It makes people hesitate before they ever confront you. Now look at George Washington, the first president of the United States. He didn't shout to be respected. He didn't need endless speeches to prove himself. His reputation for discipline, self-control, and integrity commanded loyalty. At Valley Forge, his soldiers froze in brutal winter conditions. They were hungry, sick, and exhausted. But they stayed because Washington's reputation inspired them. They believed in him, even when conditions told them to abandon hope. He didn't just have authority. He had a reputation that made obedience natural. This is the cold truth. True power is quiet. True power doesn't need to announce itself. The loudest people are rarely the most powerful. They're the most desperate to be noticed. Real reputation speaks for you. It makes mediocrity nervous and enemies cautious. Consider J. Paul Getty, one of the richest men in American history. Getty was known for ruthless business deals, but also for an image of cold calculation. Other oil magnates respected and feared him not only for his wealth, but for his reputation as a man who could outthink, outweight, and outmaneuver anyone. His reputation was armor. No one wanted to be the fool who underestimated him. Or look at the flip side, Richard Nixon. His presidency collapsed not just because of the Watergate scandal, but because his reputation was already fragile. People didn't trust him. He had a history of paranoia and secretive behavior. When the scandal broke, his reputation couldn't shield him. It magnified suspicion instead. That's the danger. Once your reputation cracks, enemies don't even need to hit you directly. Your own image becomes the weapon that destroys you. Reputation also works in business today. Think of Warren Buffett. Investors follow him not just because of his financial results, but because of his reputation for discipline and long-term thinking. He doesn't need to sell his ideas aggressively. His reputation makes people line up to hear him. Meanwhile, CEOs who chase popularity, who crave being liked, rarely last. Their reputations don't shield them, they expose them as weak. So how do you build a reputation that shields you? First, you become consistent. Consistency builds trust, and trust builds reputation. Second, you choose your battles carefully. If you fight over everything, you look desperate. If you fight rarely, but with precision, people remember. Third, you surround yourself with strength. As Machiavelli observed, the men around a ruler reflect his intelligence. If you associate with fools, your reputation dims. If you associate with disciplined, powerful people, your reputation sharpens. A strong reputation means you don't need to react to every insult. You don't need to answer every critic. In fact, your silence becomes more powerful than their noise. The best reputations intimidate without action. They inspire respect without begging. They whisper, "Don't cross him. Don't test her. Don't underestimate them." Your reputation should do two things at once: inspire respect from allies and create hesitation in enemies. When mediocrity stands next to you, it should feel exposed. When weak men think about challenging you, they should pause. That pause is your armor. That hesitation is your protection. Never forget, money can be stolen, power can be challenged, positions can be lost, but reputation endures. If built with precision, it shields you long after you've left the room. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My reputation shields me. 7. Control the frame. The person who controls the frame controls the outcome. It doesn't matter how clever the arguments are, how emotional the appeals sound, or how loud the voices get. If you control the frame, you control the field of battle. Everyone else is just reacting. Frames decide what the conversation is really about. Most people don't realize they've already lost before they open their mouth, because they've accepted someone else's frame. They argue inside boundaries that were handed to them. They defend themselves against accusations instead of rewriting the terms of the debate. Warm thinkers play inside other people's rules. Cold thinkers make the rules. Look at American politics. In the 1980 presidential debates, Jimmy Carter attacked Ronald Reagan's record as governor and painted him as reckless. A warm-minded man would have defended himself point by point, trying to disprove every accusation. Reagan didn't do that. He smiled, paused, and asked the question that reframed the entire election. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Instantly, the conversation was no longer about Carter's attacks. It was about Carter's presidency. Reagan took control of the frame and won the election in a landslide. Or consider Andrew Carnegie, who built U.S. Steel. When unions tried to negotiate higher wages, they framed the conversation around fairness. Carnegie refused to fight on that ground. He reframed the talks around productivity and efficiency, his terms, his rules. Suddenly, it wasn't about whether wages were fair. It was about whether workers were efficient enough to deserve more. He shifted the frame, and he always came out on top. The same principle works in modern business. Steve Jobs never let Apple's products be framed as just another piece of technology. He didn't talk about RAM or processing speed. He framed Apple as a lifestyle, a vision, a revolution. Competitors argued specs. Jobs argued destiny. By controlling the frame, he made his products objects of desire, not just tools. Frame control isn't about being the loudest. It's about being the calmest. It's about refusing to get dragged into someone else's emotional drama. Imagine an argument at work. A colleague says, "You made a mistake on this project, and it's costing the team." Most people would defend themselves, explain the mistake, or blame circumstances. That's the wrong move. A cold mind reframes, "What's the most productive way to solve this going forward?" You've shifted the frame from blame to solutions, from weakness to leadership. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. The wise man reframes immediately. The fool accepts the frame handed to him and wastes his energy fighting inside boundaries he didn't set. This is why most people stay powerless. They're always reacting. They're always on the defensive. Frame control also applies to time. Imagine a car dealer telling you, "This offer is only good if you sign today." The frame is urgency. If you accept it, you rush. If you're cold, you reframe. If the offer isn't good tomorrow, then it's not the right deal for me. You've shifted the frame from urgency to value. Suddenly, the pressure is on them. In relationships, frame control determines respect. When someone pulls away and demands you chase them, they're setting the frame. They are the prize. You are the pursuer. If you accept that, you lose. If you reframe by stepping back, by creating value that makes them come closer, you set the frame. You become the prize. Cold thinkers know, the person who defines the terms defines the outcome. In every interaction, ask yourself, whose frame am I in right now? Mine or theirs? If it's not yours, take it back. Don't argue inside their world. Create a new world where you win. Frame control is leadership. It's narrative dominance. It's making people play your game instead of you playing theirs. And when you master it, you don't just win arguments, you win without arguing at all. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I set rules. Closing, becoming dangerously cold. Now you know the 7 lessons, but knowledge without embodiment is useless. Coldness is not cruelty, it is precision. It is the discipline to feel only what serves you, to speak only when it strengthens you, to act only when it secures advantage. Dangerously cold men are not remembered for their kindness. Washington was remembered for his iron discipline, Rockefeller for his ruthless calculations, Lincoln for his strategic patience, Jobs for his silence that cut deeper than speeches. They all understood the same truth. The world doesn't reward the warm. It rewards the cold who choose clarity over comfort. Coldness means your reputation walks into the room before you do. It means your silence unsettles enemies and inspires allies. It means you set the frame so others play your game, not theirs. That is dangerous coldness, an armor no flattery can pierce and no insult can break. The world does not belong to the kind-hearted dreamer. It belongs to those cold enough to take power and disciplined enough to keep it. Drop your favorite lesson in the comments. Which one struck deepest and which will you embody first? Stay predictable and warm, or become dangerously cold and unstoppable. The choice is yours.